So now let's go to the material and show you the way I had it before, because then I've made the changes locally. Hysteretic, way too many materials. Okay. Okay. Oh, it said removing calls. Okay. So this is how I had it before. All right. That I would do. It takes all the input. I skip through. I kind of do some count. All right. And what this is doing is while it goes, it's reading one at a time, all the input arguments. Okay. If it finds the defo limit states, which is the attachments, I'm sorry, let's go to the format of this. God, oh, too many purple things. Okay, so what the input of this material looks like is just like hysteretic, okay? So you've got a tag and then a series of moments with some optional ones, okay? So you have definitely 2 points, but then you can have all the way up to 7. Then on the negative, definitely 2 points negative, and then up to 7. And then there's pinching. These 4 parameters are fixed, and then this parameter is optional. Okay. Then you have these string. These are additional input. The degradation for the envelope factor, which I need to implement, I couldn't get it to work. Deformation limit states and force limit states, which they have, you see, you can have as many as you want of these inputs. All right, the user, and so what the program does, the parser goes through, looks at the line and says, okay, I found this string and I'm going to read, I think in this case, I would only read 1. Okay. Or, and maybe I made it general that it's going to say read a double until it doesn't find a double anymore, right? So then it finds the string and it's going to stop. And then same thing for any one of these, okay? But I was doing these in separate loops. And that didn't seem to work. It works in mine, but it doesn't work. Or maybe it works, it's just highly inefficient. Okay? So the way Mike recommended is to put it all into one loop. And so that's what I was doing here is I said in one loop. So it'll go through everything, look for deformation limit states. And so it found it, therefore I'm going to increase the number. So, oh, and what it does is the program, oh, it's on here anyways, okay? So it goes through these loops to count the number of optional arguments, okay? Then it takes that total number of optional arguments and subtracts it from the total number of input arguments. And so what it's left with is my input, okay? Not those extras, but the input, okay? Now we need to kind of parse through that and figure out what's in that input, okay? So the first thing that I needed to do was put these 3 into a single loop. And that's what I've done here, okay? So now I have one loop while that loop is, and now it's going to say, hey, if you find deformation limit states, or if you find this, or if you find that. Okay, and then it loops within those and that goes on, right? This is what you meant, Mike, to put into a single loop. So the question is though, before I was breaking, if it doesn't find a number anymore, break out. Okay, but do I want to break or do I want to do next? How does break work in C++? Because this break was getting me out of the loop and going on to the next variable. Right now, I don't want to break. I need to stay in the loop. It's just saying, hey, move on, get out of this if. Or do I do, if it's greater than 0, do this and then stop? Do I need to rework my logic here?
I don't remember, like, because you have it nested, right? You have like a while out,
Yeah.
like an outer while loop. And then if, and then another
I copied
while.
this.
Yeah. So, but I don't remember, like, if you have a break.
So
here,
maybe what I need to do is swap it.
It'll kick you out of this loop of the inner while.
Okay. So this could work, but what if I do it?
Which will then just take you down to here.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. It should work.
Because otherwise this is gonna go on to infinity and then I'll never hit these points because I'm looping. Or maybe I'm not because this while is still there. This is a while here. Because one way to do it would be to move this into here, right? And put this greater than or equal to 0. No, because then it's just going to skip them.
I think the way,
yeah.
that was, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't work because it will skip them. So yeah, so you're right. This is a while loop. So this is going to exit out of the while loop. You're right. I hadn't realized that I was in a loop within a loop. Okay, so this will work then. Yes.
I think, yeah.
Yep. Okay, and so I do this for deformation limit states, force limit states, and then, okay, so let me ask you, Mike. So for the degradation envelope factor, I'm really only looking for one variable.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's why I'm not doing while.
Yeah, you're just reading the next one.
Right, I'm just reading the next one because I only have one input. So before, because I didn't know how many inputs I would have, it's going to read until it hits a wall with a string. Now I only need to read one, so I don't want to loop. I'm just going to say, hey, get the next one. So if I still have numbers though, okay, then if it gives you an error, return 0. Otherwise, just add on that number.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think up here you need to do you'll need to reset something. I know you have it commented out, but I think you need to still move the pointer back. One, like say you're reading defo limit states, or just say you're reading force limit states, and then you have a bunch of numbers. They all get read in, fine. But then you have defo limit states, and this is going to fail, or this will be true, right? And then you'll break out, and because you've read defo limit states, right?
So maybe why can't I just go back to my 3 loops then, Mike, and just you remove the reset counter? Why can't I just do this in 3? Why can't I just stay the way I had it before then? Why can't I just go through the process, the loop? It's not like I have 200, not like this is, I need to do this at every time step, right? I'm doing this once. Did your putting in or removing the reset counter fix the problem? Because you're right. What you're saying is, hey, it found it, but now you've got to the next step. And does this work?
I think you just need to make that a -1 instead of the location, because you just want to move it back 1, right? Because you'll read the next string.
Right. I wanted to reread it.
And then you go back through the loop, you need to reread it. So just set it back 1.
Oh, so this is what you commented out?
No.
Okay, you removed the in-betweens. Okay, so because this is something for some reason I had it commented out, or that's how I found it. So you're saying is do this
and just say -1.
But -1, is that a relative or is that an absolute that it goes back to 0?
Oh.
So I think lock, what's location is where it's at right now. And so this is kind of doing it. Okay, now stay at this point and break. So that it's going to read.
I don't remember if that's relative or.
If somebody had lock, it must be where it was at before.
Yeah. I think it's relative because, I mean, look at that one. That's negative number of args. So it's moving you back.
Okay.
Number of args. I think you want to make that -1.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you'll have to just, do a little test and spit out what it's actually reading in. But yeah. I mean,
okay. Yeah, I can always re-output. Okay. Yeah. So now we're done with this, and but all I've done is gotten a count of, oh no, I've collected So here it is. So here's the question though. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm pushing it. So now I've got an array that's called def or limit states. And I've got an array that's called force limit state. Look at this. Why do I have, am I increasing the location? No, because this is just looping, so I don't have to really do this. I don't know where.
I don't think you need that.
Yeah, so this was the old version, okay? So as I'm going through, I'm looking and I'm grabbing. So the first step I do is I grab the number of limit states and deformation limit states, okay? So I've built an array of those input variables. And I'm going to have those because I want to compare the current strain to any one of these points. You know, am I above it or what is the ratio? I can do whatever I want with it, okay? So the user can actually define certain deformation points or force points that you want me to check on the recorders. Okay, that's what the point of these are. They're not going to affect the behavior. They're just for the recorders. And I did it, typically you do it on forces, but why not deformations? But I put it on forces as well. Then I'm saying for the degradation envelope factor, shouldn't I be like assigning it a value? Or I'm reading it? Oh, okay.
You're
I
reading
said,
it
okay, get
directly
the
in.
double input and read it directly into here.
Yeah.
Okay. While the other ones, I was reading it and then appending it to the vector.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I've read one value and put it into the value. Okay, so now I'm done with my optional input. Now it's going to go back and say, hey, we
It goes
actually
back to the beginning. Yeah.
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 And it's going to say the actual number of arguments that I have is, you know, whatever's left. So the original number minus 717, whatever it is. Okay, now things get interesting because here's what I made a little matrix of things. and here's the interesting thing though. And it's interesting because it made me, Jessica, you're looking at reinforcing steel that doesn't have symmetric curves, right? Now, hysteretic material, you don't, and that's what's nice. You could try using hysteretic for your steel, even though reinforcing steel, the buckling thing, but if you don't care about it, it doesn't matter. It gets triggered by some other number, so it's not a fixed envelope. But with hysteretic, you can define the envelope. You always have to define 2 points, and then you can define 3, and that's where hysteretic stops. What I've done is I've added a whole bunch. I realized that I can actually, I was only doing 5 or 7, but because these numbers, because all we're checking is how many numbers do I have in my input? And that's what this is. It's the sum of input numbers, okay? So what's dark are fixed, all right? These are all the optional ones here, here, as well as that beta at the very end. As Mike reminded me in a text, that it's also optional, okay? So, but if, and this is kind of a limitation, and this is something interesting about input, right? We're not saying positive envelope, and maybe it could be a flag that we could add to here, right? Instead of saying from everything is out, okay? And therefore, the only way we can do this is it's symmetric. It has 7, it doesn't have symmetric input, but it either has 7 positive and 7 negative, right? And a beta. Good thing that that's an odd number, because otherwise it would throw me off. And so as your number of inputs increases, this gets complicated because I can't say, you know, 4 points in the positive and 5 in the negative, because the way I have the parser right now, I kind of have to assume if I have 34 input parameters, this is what the input is. If I have 33, this is the input. If I have 30, so, you know, 29 and so on, right? But let's say I had something like this where I have 4 points in negative in, you know, and 5 points in positive. Okay, what happens? Well, now I've got 24 and 23. Oh, this is actually, okay. So it could still work, right? It's a unique check, but if I could do this, Or I can do this and I still have the same number of inputs. So the current implementation of this hysteretic, it's nice because you don't have to put a million little flags, but it doesn't allow me to do non-symmetric number of points in the envelope. So I kind of have to decide at this point, and let's make a decision, right? This is the thing, okay? What I'm learning, I mean, I spend a lot of time doing these kind of interfaces, right? You guys, most of you guys have either done it or definitely using them, right? And you get errors. What do we do? Should we keep it easy like this? Or should I put a flag that says positive envelope, negative envelope? And then I can have as many points as I want for the negative envelope and as many points as I want for the positive envelope.
Then you got to put flags for pinch and damage and beta.
Yeah, and then you got to put flags for these guys as well.
Yeah.
Maybe move them to the front and do that. And while I'm at it, put stress and strain instead of strain and stress versus stress and strain, which drives me crazy. You know, or I'd like to have stress envelope, you know, stress values. And I think that's how his pinch, you know, the INK materials have a different format. And so what do we do? Do we make things easier for the user? But so this is to me Apple versus a PC, right? It's limitations, but you don't have to think about it. Or do you have flexibility, but therefore the user needs to think about it, right? Or needs to put additional little flags.
We use my object-oriented hysteretic thing.
Yeah, well, you keep
you
talking
just create,
about it.
I know. You just create different backbones and you just give it tags instead of
right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what we did with the wrapper as well. But
Yeah.
but so here, what do I do? What would you do, Bijan? So one is
I'm thinking about this, you know, your command, your input arguments is too much long, you know. I think in some way it become more explicit is very better. So adding flags helps to the user to understand what are we doing more, you know. This is my idea.
Yeah, so I agree with you because then, so it's funny that you say that because, oh, I'd have to pull out my Jupyter notebook. The way I do this type of input is I actually define an array for positive envelope. And so my input actually looks like, you know, tag, and then I'll write it in tickle, you know, positive envelope, and then negative. I do this anyways, right? Because you don't go in and write in the input one by one. So yes, and you're right, because then it also looks better, you know, and this becomes so hard to debug. Somebody, I mean, that was the problem that I had when our friend Mike, he sent us the input. I was like, okay, wait, where's the positive? Where's the negative? Where's this? And where's that? What's good about it too, is if you want, and I think this is how Perform does it, is what if I just say envelope type, it's symmetric. So I don't have to retype this in. I can put in, you know, flag negative envelope, and I just, right? And I put in actually the term, you know, symmetric. That's how Perform does it. So you don't have to re-input that and say, you know, y1 is equal to negative y2 and so on, right? What if I just put in the word symmetric instead of, now parsing is going to be hard because now it's going to look for a string, but that's okay because I know to look and I can say, hey, if you find negative envelope, then look for the word symmetric. If it's there, do this. If it's not, do that.
Absolutely,
So,
that's great. Absolutely, that's great.
That's a good point. That's,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
that's
and then
very good.
it goes to, you know, what you're saying, Mike, is defining the envelopes, you know, and I like, and honestly, I think these could really use a flag because they're always so hard to find at the very end. And it's funny because that's how I define. This is my vector, this is my pinching vector, and this is my damage vector in my input anyways. And so it could actually make it much more documentable if you've got, you know, tag, then, oh, let me just.
Yeah, it's like quarks, right? And it becomes
Exactly,
yeah,
becomes quarks, which is something that we're a
yeah.
lot more used to. So then you
Yeah.
say tag, and then, you know, positive, I can say positive envelope, you know, pause envelope. And then negative, and I know I got to come up with a consistent term, right? So maybe something like that. And then, you know, energy term or pinching terms. And something like that, it just makes it so much more concise and easier because we're defining these in the 20 million lines above anyways. So what do you guys think? Am I putting too much of a burden? I'm not putting too, and that's the thing. It's like you think you're putting a burden on the user, but it doesn't matter because we're always copying and pasting anyways. But it just makes it so much, look at how concise this is versus all those numbers that nobody really puts anymore anyways. You're still going to put this as a thing beforehand. But it'd be nice to not have to deal with the negatives. Not only that,
You could put them in different orders too.
you could put them in things, you could skip it, you could put whatever you want. You're right, because you can always add. The other thing is I still need to check that your negative numbers are negative. Because there's some materials that allow them to be positive and then they convert them to negative or vice versa. I still don't know. And so every time I input a negative number, I take the absolute value of it and put negative. You know what I mean? It's tricky with positives and negatives. So then maybe this should be the interface for the HystereticSM super material. That's what SM stands for, by the way. So yeah, do I have a vote for that? Do you like it?
Yeah.
Like this? Is this better? Mike,
Yeah,
you
because then you could have different numbers of points on each backbone. You don't have to like, because you're going to run into issue if you're just counting arguments. It's unstable, right? I mean, you're just going to get situations where it's 5 of this and 7 of that, or 7 and 5, and then or 6 and 6, and then you can't distinguish, right?
Right, and I don't have to. My formulation is independent of that. So,
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other things I need to check now. And also counting arguments within counting arguments is a pain. The question is, do we stick with stress, you know, stress and strain, stress and strain, stress and strain, or do we go to strain and stress, strain and stress? I'm tempted to keep the same format as hysteretic, as backwards as it is. Or do we define all, the problem with defining all the strains and all the stresses, which I kind of like better because that's how I define it, then you may be putting the wrong numbers. And so it's good. Okay, so I'm with you, Bijan, shaking his head. So we still do pairs, but do we do stress and strain or strain and stress?
In the mathematics, the horizontal, first we write horizontal axis number and then vertical. Horizontal is usually strain and vertical is stress.
Right,
So
XY. Why is hysteretic YX, Mike?
Someone like you see the y-axis on the plan, do not see, you know, it's vertical. Yeah, maybe someone like
so since we're making a change, do we go to strain and stress, or do we stick with what I don't like, which is stress and strain, which is not the end of the world? So do we stay consistent, or do we really do our own thing? We're going to call this the Hysteretic Cafe, OpenSees Cafe material.
But I'm sure strain stress is more better than second one.
Yes, but people are going to get confused because people are going to be going from hysteretic to HystereticSM. We want to steal the hysteretic folks and convert them to this material. And so do we, we don't have that much of a user base compared to what we could be. So I think people can get used to the change because it's a better change.
Yeah,
What do you
but
think?
if people are going to reuse the code that they had before, they will
Yeah.
face an unknown problem here. It should be noted clearly that this is a huge difference between the two.
Yeah,
Um,
nobody reads the notes.
Yeah, so
Suggestion.
this should be noted.
So, oh, I have an idea.
I have an idea also.
So what we could do is positive envelope stress strain, or you could do positive envelope strain stress.
Yeah,
So we
that's
could do,
better.
and no, because it's the SS is the same. Positive envelope X. So maybe we could do positive envelope as the default is this, right? Which is, this is minus, no, this is minus positive envelope. Okay, and maybe I could call this minus positive envelope XY. And so this is the default, but if people want to go on to a better one, because now I could do whatever I want. It could
Why
be
not YX?
because this is the
XY?
default. I don't want to confuse people. So the default is going to be positive envelope, which is YX, right? If you want, this could be either positive envelope or positive envelope YX. It's going to send to the same, but this is the default is the YX. That could be a good compromise. It's just extra code. I'm a big fan. It's so funny. So many times when I deal with people who are designing database or UIs, or always try to do the least programming they can. For me, it's like the opposite. I want to do as much programming as I can so that the user has to do the least work
Easy.
and therefore give them less opportunities to make mistakes. Yes.
Sylvia, have we a condition that the stress value become become smaller than strain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zero.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you're right.
Yeah. So no, I don't want to. I don't ever make assumptions. We talked about this, Bijan. Never make assumptions on that because you don't want to.
I wanted to tell you that put strain and stress, then just check the values. If someone entered a value that the stress was smaller than strain, then you put a warning and tell that the first should be.
But you can't do that because they're different dimensions and different units too.
You're right.
So
you're right.
But that's a good point because that's what I was thinking. For the negative, that's what you check. Is it negative? Is it positive? And stuff. So, see, because then what we could do is the negative envelope, and it could just be symmetric, or negative envelope, whatever, XXX. So I like this idea. What do you think, Mike?
I mean, if you want to program all that, yeah, but
it's
I mean, if it says documented and people read it and they know, right? Then
but this would require.
I say just pick one and then.
Yeah, but to me, this requires less documentation than this big colorful matrix.
Yeah, I mean the X, Y, Y, X, like all that stuff. Like I think just pick one and then just
I agree with
you. Yeah,
but that's easy to do, to put this into an option. I mean, this is just, it could be a hidden feature.
Yeah, but it'll probably cause other confusion too. So
yeah, well, that's the thing. So And so what would you pick? To stick with the bad, or
I
be
mean,
radical and go with new?
yeah, I mean,
No, don't
I'd
tell
pick
me what
whatever I
goes.
wanted to do and then just
Yeah.
make sure it's
What
in the
would you do?
documentation, right?
What would you do?
I would do whatever I wanted and then document
No,
it.
but
right?
tell me, what would you do in this case? I'm not gonna, doesn't mean, I
Yeah.
never do what people tell me to do. Don't worry.
Yeah.
You're just a
Yeah.
data point. I just want your opinion. I'm not gonna do what you tell me. But
I mean, I would probably leave it as it is, right? But
okay.
for better or worse, but yeah.
Yeah.
But if it's documented, like nobody can complain, right? I mean,
I know, but then we
but
spend our
we get that a
time
lot, right?
fixing
People are like,
those
why doesn't
errors.
OpenSees read it this way? Well, because
RTFM.
it doesn't do it that way. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
So,
it's in the manual.
does everyone here know what this means? RTFM. Is this something popular in your generation? Google it. This should be the answer to everything.
It's
It's got a
probably
bad word.
only known in the US, right?
But not even in the US. A lot of people in the US
Oh,
don't
really?
know it either. The new generation doesn't know it because they don't. It doesn't, that concept doesn't exist anymore. So this should be the
I don't know.
response to every
Jessica, do you know
single-
this one? Or-
No, I don't know what that means.
Oh, okay. Okay.
A lot of people,
Alright.
Tim Kraft didn't know what it meant. A lot of even just, you
Oh,
got I
wow.
think it's mostly
Okay.
programmers, you know, or,
Yeah.
people who learn,
RTFB, RTFM, right?
you know, it's RTFM with 2
Yeah.
exclamation marks, is because, you know, it's pretty. People don't read it though, especially nowadays, especially with UIs that are intuitive, which is the point. I mean, that's the best thing, is not having, if you have to document it, then then you didn't do it right, is my take on it. I mean, up to a certain point, of course.
Yeah. But I mean, but if you're building an application like databases, websites, or whatever, like you got to read the document. Like
Yeah.
that's the only way to
Yeah, I
figure
agree with
things
you.
out, right?
So I think we'll stick, because people are going to port that, but I might just sneak this in anyways.
Yeah, undocumented,
say.
right? for
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
So, or we'll put this positive envelope, you know, cafe, that one we'll call cafe secret. So, okay, well, that used up our time today. I hope this was helpful and fun. I think it's something to think about with your own work as well. It wasn't just we didn't even get to OpenSees. So, cool. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I will let
Thank
you
you.
know where the ball lands on this case. So, all right.
Okay.
What?
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alright.
Bye.
Good
Thank
luck
you.
with your stuff, Jessica, on that material.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.